Well, on Sunday, yesterday, I woke up to WhatsApp texts from friends in UAE saying that Dubai was being bombed. I'd spent most of the night binge watching Netflix and also trying to short big tech companies like Nvidia and SanDisk. So I went onto social media and found out that the Burj Al Arab was on fire, and I thought, who would... the Taliban? What could be happening? The story was that a bad Leroy Brown Ayatollah was dead.
We are getting information from Israeli sources that the Ayatollah is dead.
Iranian state media has confirmed the death of the country's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Khamenei's daughter, grandchild, and 2 other family members were also killed in the strikes. Earlier, Iran launched missiles and drones towards Israel and US military bases in the region in response to earlier attacks.
After much radio silence, the state news broadcast announced the martyrdom of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini.
Well, Iranian state TV read out a statement from the country's Supreme National Security Council announcing Ayatollah Khomeini's assassination.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, the noble soul of Imam Khamenei, leader of the great nation of Iran, the freedom seekers of the world, and the Islamic nations, has joined the highest paradise and reached his long-cherished wish of martyrdom in the holy month of Ramadan.
It seems that President Trump and Netanyahu had gone in to help the Iranian people liberate themselves from their government by killing a bunch of school children and bombing strategic nuclear sites.
They say they're working through a list of military targets. This is a satellite image of an Iranian naval vessel on fire inside the seawall in the port of Bandar Abbas. But Iranian civilians are also in the firing line. Overnight in Tehran, children were among those treated after the Gandhi hospital was badly damaged. The hospital is out of use. Israel's prime minister said they're targeting tyrants in Tehran to protect civilians. But war is never as clean or simple as a soundbite.
Here's the president himself telling us how this adventure began.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
In retaliation, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, hit back with Operation True Promise.
In Kuwait, 3 American F-15 warplanes were shot down. The Americans said, mistakenly, by friendly fire from the Kuwaitis, trying to disrupt and outflank America's power, hoping the Saudis and others will put pressure on Donald Trump to end the war. But making Gulf Arab states who did not want the war into targets, this was Dubai, looks to be a bad mistake for Iran, pushing them closer to the US and Israel. The Israelis attacked Beirut after Iran's Lebanese ally Hezbollah fired into Israel's north.
Hitting strategic American bases based around the Gulf. My beloved Dubai was hit. Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, Kuwait, and I was supposed to be there from like December till March until I became ill. Support of the US-Israeli strikes came from all over the West, from Keir Starmer.
The regime in Iran is utterly abhorrent. They have murdered thousands of their own people, brutally crushed dissent, and sought to destabilize the region.
Zelensky.
Важливо зберегти якнайбільше життів. Важливо не допускати розширення війни.
Mark Carney of Canada.
Despite numerous diplomatic efforts, Iran has neither fully dismantled its nuclear program, halted all enrichment activities, nor ended its support for regional terrorist proxy groups. Canada stands with the Iranian people in their long and courageous struggle against this oppressive regime.
And so forth. Meanwhile, in Israel,
It's coming at a cost for the Israelis, with funerals in Bet Shemesh near Jerusalem of civilians killed by an Iranian missile. Israel's air defense system is strong, but not infallible.
The scale of the damage, the destruction here, gives us an idea of the power of this attack.
back at the Pentagon, some military experts were a bit iffy about this war going ahead. There was some rumors that they were leaking their discomfort about the war, and they didn't even think America had enough ammunition to carry on a war this big after selling most of it to Ukraine over this last few years.
Huge leaks coming out of the Pentagon. The Pentagon is leaking about how desperately they don't want to go to war with Iran. That is how bad the current situation is. But here is Trump's truth yesterday. Numerous stories from the fake news media have been circulating that General Daniel Kane, sometimes referred to as Raisin Kane, is against us going to war with Iran. The story does not attribute his vast wealth of knowledge to anyone and is 100% incorrect. General Kane, like all of us, would like not to see war. But if a decision is made on going against Iran at a military level, it is opinion that everything will be easily won. Bookmark that for history.
A deepening debate about the legality of America and Israel's decision to go to war, probably weeks of airstrikes, and without doubt, years of consequences. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News.
Was this going to be the same kind of help that Obama in 2011 gave to Libya, or the type that they gave to Sudan, that divided Sudan to North and South Sudan? Or was it going to be the same as Bush gave in 2003 to Iraq, which led into these countries into chaos, which they're still suffering now? The prominent pundit, Jeffrey Sachs, American academic and economist, thinks that this invasion or this war is bound to fail. Take a look at this clip from India Global Left.
So this is basically a CIA Mossad long-term strategy. It has left a trail of blood throughout the Middle East, actually stretching from Libya, which the US and Israel and others overthrew in 2011, killing Muammar Gaddafi and putting Libya into turmoil. It stretches to Sudan, where Mossad played a major role in fomenting the breakup of Sudan. It includes the genocide in Gaza, the occupation and annexation of the West Bank. It includes the overthrow of the Syrian government, which was a CIA Mossad operation that began in 2011. It includes the invasion of Iraq by the United States in 2003. And the plan all along has been to overthrow the government of Iran one way or another. They have used bombing in the past. They have used assassinations in the past. They have used economic warfare in the past. Now they're trying again with another bombing campaign. This one will fail also. But I think the consequences for the world will be very serious.
To understand how we got here, let's go back to a few weeks ago when huge protests broke out all over Iran, and the government retaliated by killing about 1,000, shooting with hanging, throwing them in prison, beating them up of their own people.
that we also have a responsibility to understand the boundaries we shouldn't cross.
Last month, Iranians suffered through the bloodiest crackdown on dissent in the country's modern history. What started with economic demands quickly turned into mass nationwide demonstrations calling for the end of the Islamic Republic system. The regime responded with a massacre, cutting all internet access to conceal the repression. The Iranian government says 3,117 people were killed in the protests, whilst US-based human rights activist news agency puts the number of dead at 7,015.
This is, of course, very bad, but it's no business of ours or of the West to go into other people's countries to take out a foreign leader. Because if this was reversed and developing countries got together and say, well, we don't like Macron, we need to go in there and take him out, there'll be an outcry. So while I do admit, I agree that Khomeini is not possibly the best, wasn't possibly the best ruler of Iran, I don't see what business it is of ours to go in there. If this is the logic, then why aren't we going into North Korea and taking out their supreme leader? Why aren't we going into Russia? After we disagreed with the war, but we've gone into Venezuela. We sort of attempted a Nigerian thing. How about the Congo? The Hawk podcast makes this interesting point.
This government spokesperson for Iran was using a lot of the same language to describe Iranian protesters that our government has been using to describe American protesters this year, with all of Trump's Antifa executive orders and domestic terrorist executive orders. And that struck me immediately when I heard him speaking this morning. Their government is also vastly disputing the number of Iranian protesters who were killed, who were mainly protesting the fact that the regime under the supreme leader, who the government was spending all of its money funding things like the Houthi rebels and funding Hamas and funding Hezbollah in Lebanon, instead of funding things or funding programs that would benefit the Iranian people. Again, that's a direct reflection of what the Trump administration has been doing. They're spending $50 billion to buy massive warehouses to build detention centers for God knows who.
This clip from The Lost Economy gives a more detailed insight into what happened over the weekend.
This is a full-blown retaliation. The perception in Tehran is that a red line was crossed, and they responded exactly the way they said they would. Starting late Friday night local time, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, launched Operation True Promise 4. We are talking about hundreds of missiles and drones launched simultaneously. But here's the scary part that really changes the game. In the past, Iran has mostly targeted Israel directly, or used proxies to lob a few things at bases in Iraq or Syria. This time, they turned their launchers south. They went after the Gulf. Let's look at the target map, because the geography of this attack tells you everything about Iran's strategy. They hit Kuwait. They specifically targeted the Ali al-Salem air base, a massive installation that hosts American and coalition forces. Then you have Qatar. Qatar is home to Al Udeid Air Base. It is the largest U.S. military base in the entire Middle East. It is the forward headquarters of U.S. Central Command. Around 10,000 American troops are stationed there, and Iran hit it with waves of missiles. The Qatari Defense Ministry said they intercepted most of them, but when you're throwing that much firepower, some is going to get through. And then there is the UAE, Abu Dhabi, Dubai. These are cities that represent the pinnacle of safety and luxury in the region. They were hit. There are reports of a fire at the Jebel Ali port, one of the busiest container ports in the world. The Etihad towers in Abu Dhabi were struck by debris, injuring civilians. But perhaps the most symbolic, and frankly the most dangerous strike, was in Bahrain. That is where the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet is headquartered. Images coming out of Manama show plumes of black smoke rising from the Jufair district. And let's not forget the economics of this. The Strait of Hormuz is right there. If this escalates further, if Iran decides to really choke the point, 20% of the world's oil supply gets cut off. We are already seeing oil prices spike, but if tankers start getting hit, and we already saw an attack on the oil tanker Skylight off the coast of Oman, then we are looking at a global energy crisis. For decades, the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, The UAE, Qatar, Kuwait have paid a security tax to the United States. They host our bases, they buy our weapons, and in return, we provide a security umbrella. The unspoken promise was that if you host American troops, America will keep the fight away from your skylines. That promise was shattered last night. When missiles are raining down on Dubai, when the Palm is rattled by explosions, that changes the equation for these governments. The Gulf is now a battlefield, and this puts the U.S. in a tricky spot.
The lost economy there, go and check it out. The negotiations to quell this war was led by what one pundit describes as the Laurel and Hardy of the diplomatic field. Let's take a look at this clip from Chris Edges.
The Laurel and Hardy negotiating team of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, coupled with Trump's appalling ignorance of world affairs and megalomania, seems set to push the United States into yet another debacle in the Middle East, one that Congress has not approved and the public does not support. The demands imposed on Iran by the Trump White House are no more acceptable to the regime in Tehran than those imposed on Hamas in Gaza under Trump's sham peace plan. Trump's demand that Iran shut down its nuclear program and give up its missile capabilities in return for no new sanctions is as tone-deaf as calling on Hamas to disarm. But since we have long dispensed with diplomats who are linguistically, politically, and culturally literate, who can step into the shoes of their adversaries, we are being led to another war in the Middle East by our newest coterie of buffoons. The U.S. and Israel foolishly believe they can bomb their way to decapitating the Iranian government and installing a client regime. The promise of no new sanctions will not incentivize Iran to broker an agreement. Iran will not give up its nuclear program, which has the potential to be weaponized, or its ballistic missile program, which Israel said it would target in an air attack. Israel's reputed nuclear arsenal of some 300 warheads is a powerful incentive for Iran to retain the capacity to build a nuclear arsenal of its own. Iran, like Hamas, is never going to render itself defenseless against those seeking its annihilation. Mounting losses and a huge spike in oil prices will provide the fodder for Trump and his vile counterpart in Israel to ignite a sustained regional war.
Now, what he was alluding to it there is that a prolonged war will impact the financial system worldwide. The impact of the geopolitical events like bombings on the cryptocurrency market is going to be very complex, and it's going to vary depending on the nature and the scope of the conflict. If Iran successfully blocks the Strait of Hormuz, which is like a narrow waterway between Iran to the north and Oman and the UAE to the south, and about 20% of the world's oil passes through this waterways. If that is blocked somehow, that's going to impact petrol, which is going to impact factories, manufacturing, and so on, and it's going to spiral. And of course, Bitcoin relies a lot on energy. So what's that going to do to the price of Bitcoin? That's why we're here after all. One, market volatility. There's going to be increased uncertainty, with petrol being difficult to come by in that area. Countries like Nigeria and Venezuela increased their price to capitalize on this shortage. In crypto, there's going to be short-term sell-offs. People panicking and maybe jumping into gold, silver, diamonds, I don't know. Could lead to new regulations and, as I said earlier on, sanctions, potentially affecting the crypto market. I went to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT was saying the CBDC might be forced through by people so that they can trace who's spending money, who's sending money to help Iran, who's sending money to help the Taliban. There could be a shift in investor sentiment if the global market's afraid of long, protracted conflict, which is still going in Libya, which wasn't predicted in Afghanistan. That went on for ages. The 2-week war in Ukraine has now gone on for 4 years. And also, the tech side might not grow at all, because when there's a war, most tech is focused on the war effort. And Israel is one of the biggest kind of tech innovators in crypto. So is America. And you can see what happened with Ukraine, where they developed new kind of warfare, new kind of ways of using drones and making tanks and airplanes sort of obsolete in a way. And this could happen with this war as well, because nobody expected Iran to strike Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, and all those things. So something else is going to come out of this. Altcoins are always more volatile than Bitcoin, and maybe they're going to suffer like a sharp decline, especially since we're still in the bear market. So this could be an opportunity to carry on shorting. I haven't really shorted properly in the last 2 months when I should have been since October. But obviously, because I was ill, I was recovering from things, I'd be a bit scared of, every time I tried to put money in a short, it suddenly went up by 20% the next day. And then this war could be profitable to people who take advantage of the decline of the crypto prices or the increase of the oil prices. In conclusion, the effect of Iranian-Israel US war will depend on the severity and the scope of the conflict. In general, increased uncertainty tends to lead to everything plummeting and people run into gold, i.e. very volatile. And so while some see Bitcoin as a safe haven, the market as a whole is going to experience like mood swings, like crypto on its period or something. The best thing to do probably is just follow the principle of Ivan on Text Bull Mania and just follow the price. See where the sentiment is going and then invest that way rather than trying to predict. For me, this means I'm going to try and continue shorting altcoins and using leverage on the commodity called petroleum. So until next time, this is Alexander F. Nileri saying be safe out there.